Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. No, I haven't changed house. I've just changed room for better internet connection because it was failing in the previous room. I've gone down a level of my house, but that's irrelevant. More importantly, Chris Hamill and Patrick Van Straten are with me, and we are looking at THFC Mike's question, who has asked who are the best talents outside of the top 5 leagues of European football. But before we get into that, just a quick reminder to subscribe to EuroFootball Daily and hit that notification bell to never miss a Continental Club. I'm going to say that until you are all subscribed, everyone in the world. But yeah, let's get into this question because it's a question we get asked regularly, but we've never really had the right time, the right research time to be able to put it to good use. But with not so much football on at the moment, we thought it was the perfect time. And I think the first name we probably jumped to is Hakim Ziyech. The Moroccan has emerged as one of the best players outside of Europe's top 5 leagues for about 3 years now, and a fantastic contributor in the Champions League as well, with 12 goal contributions in his last 17 Champions League games for Ajax. But as everyone knows, he's going to Chelsea in the summer in a £33.3 million deal, which, given the current crisis, seems like an absolute snip. What a player he's been over the last few years. But Pat, we wanted to start with one of his teammates at Ajax, who might not always get the sort of plaudits that he potentially deserves.
Yeah, well, I mean, with good reason, people are a little bit suspicious of players out of the Eredivisie because you do see insane numbers coming out of there. Like Quincy Promes this season had a really good year with 12 goals and 4 assists, but I wouldn't advocate going and trying to buy Quincy Promes. Dusan Tadic is on 11 goals and 14 assists, and to be honest, if he were younger, he probably would be coming back to a big league. Donny Van De Beek obviously linked with a move, but I think kind of the unsung star of their season has been Lisandro Martinez at centre-back, / defensive midfield, / left-back. Like, he can seemingly play everywhere. Signed for them for about 6 mil last summer from Defensa in Argentina. And I think that only one game has not featured him of Ajax's this season. I think only Tadic, Onana and Tagliafico have played more minutes, which really does say something about how indispensable he's become to this side. And he spent the majority of that time on the field in midfield, probably because he's a little short for a centre-back. He's about 5'10", and I think it's unlikely, especially if you go to a top league, that you're going to get regular minutes at centre-back at that height. But his output has been absolutely fantastic despite being shifted around. Like, often when you see players moved around from position to position, all their stats kind of turn into a bit of a mess. But he just looks really, really solid. About 4 tackles and interceptions per game. That stays stable across the Champions League too. 2 shots, which is pretty hilarious. Nearly a chance created a match, and 1.3 dribbles at an 87% completion rate. I mean, for a 22-year-old who also has 89% pass accuracy, nearly 4 long balls a game, you've got a guy there who's got a really nicely rounded skill set. And if he could transfer that to a bigger league, then we'd probably see him getting linked with some pretty impressive clubs. Because, you look at some of the players who are linked with big clubs right now. There's like Arambari, who's been linked with Atletico Madrid. And his numbers do not compare to this at all, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I don't really see the fuss, and yet people are calling him the new Gabi. Every season there's some guy, there's a Spanish midfielder usually in La Liga who everyone is talking about as if he's going to turn into one of the greatest midfielders of all time, and they're almost never particularly exciting. So I think that Lisandro Martinez would probably be an interesting signing for a kind of an ambitious Europa League level club maybe. Or a very wealthy mid-table Premier League side. But you look at, say, Everton, who've really struggled this season defensively in midfield because Baman got injured early on and he's been injured again now, is facing another few months out. This is the sort of sensible signing that they could go and get, and I don't think he'd cost an arm and a leg. And actually, the Eredivisie is full of players like this at the moment. You've got like Calvin Stengs, who's having a great season. You love Calvin Stengs, 21-year-old at Arced. Having a really good campaign, I think 12 goal involvements. Luis Sinisterra was having a great season. Huge dribble numbers, big defensive numbers from the wing, as well as great expected goal and assist numbers. I think he was on 0.6 a game. Unfortunately, he's sidelined with a knee injury, but he's got a year left on his contract and he's 20. Like, these are interesting players that teams could be looking at as bargains. And I think that probably the Eredivisie can expect a busy summer with outgoings. because a lot of teams might want a cheaper option than they'd otherwise get shopping in another top 5 league.
Yeah, for sure. I thought Everton was a great shout. I was just thinking when you were describing his skill set where he'd fit best. And Everton are quite heavily linked with Alan, Napoli's Alan. But he's 29 and coming off a pretty mediocre season by his own exceptional standards over the last 4 or 5 years. He's really sort of been superseded by Zielinski and Fabian Ruiz in that midfield. Obviously, Fabian Ruiz plays a slightly different position as well. But yeah, Lisandro Martinez, great pickup. It's just... And played well in the Champions League. I remember against Chelsea as well. I think in the away game, in that mental away game, he played very well. And played very well against Victor Osimhen at centre-back as well during another Champions League game. So seemingly having a big future. But we talk about moves to the Premier League there, Chris. And the player you're bringing to the table has been heavily linked with a move to Chelsea for months now.
Yeah, as you were talking about Lisandro, I was actually thinking about... Moussa Dembele's skill set sounds quite akin to that, doesn't it? And those players are super rare. So if Lisandro Martinez does become available, and you do believe you can develop him into that sort of player, then yeah, I'm with you guys. I'd go for it. Yeah, my player is a little bit more of an obvious shout, just because he's been in the headlines of late, and it's 27-year-old Alex Telles from Porto, who they signed from Galatasaray for what seems like an insane bargain of 6.5 million euros now. The season prior to that, just to give you a bit of context, just to give you a bit of history, he made 22 appearances under Roberto Mancini at Inter Milan. So he has been touted to kind of be the next big thing before. But after his time to Portugal, he's just become a more well-rounded player, a more level head, and an excellent contributor, particularly going forward. 46 goal contributions in 118 Liga NOS games. And like Pat mentioned there about the Eredivisie, people are right to have a certain degree of scepticism as well when it comes to the Liga NOS. Although the Liga NOS in recent times does have an excellent pedigree in terms of producing real stars for not just middling sides, but top sides. And the sort of latest examples of that, I guess, are Ricardo Pereira at Leicester City, João Moutinho at Wolves, although a bit more of a season campaigner, obviously done the rounds playing in Liga and as well. Raul Jimenez, who was a revelation for Wolves, albeit a very expensive one. Bruno Fernandes obviously hit the ground running at Manchester United. You have Edison. I'm going to stop reading off names there. That was just a little sample. I think Ricardo Pereira is probably the most useful point of reference, right? So when he was in Liga NOS, his numbers were good, very good, but not as good as they are at current in the Premier League, which gives maybe Chelsea fans hope that Alex Telles can make another step up performance-wise, maybe if he does join the Blues. And he has been touted to join a lot of sides, but Chelsea obviously one that the papers keep referring back to. So let's just go back to Ricardo Pereira for a second, because in 27 Liga NOS appearances in 17-18, he contributed 2 goals, 4 assists, 5.7 tackles and interceptions. We know he's a beast in that regard. Even though, like I said, those numbers have spiked since going into the Premier League. 0.8 shots, 1.4 key passes, and 1.9 dribbles. And I've not got all those the numbers from this season in front of me, but I would bet my bottom dollar that 80% of those metrics have improved. So if Ricardo Pereira can do it, why not Alex Telles, who's making a similar impact at Porto right now? And he's got that pedigree. We've got that sort of data, that sample size, a good sample size from European football as well, European competition, where in the Europa League he's racked up 3.8 tackles, interceptions, 2.6 key passes, and 1.1 dribbles. And subsequently, as a result of this domestic and European form, he's been linked with the likes of Chelsea, like I said, PSG, Juventus, although that just seems a little bit obscure given the depth they've got. He only has 1 year remaining on his current deal, so I don't think Porto are going to get any more than sort of 17 to 21 for him. Like you guys intimated, the market this summer is going to be a little bit more topsy-turvy. I don't think teams are going to be able to hold out and sort of encourage bidding frenzies in a way they might have, a couple of years ago, owing to extra circumstances, COVID and whatnot. So it becomes a question of, I guess, Alex Telles. Now he's an international. Now he's a much more established name than he was at Inter. Having already failed at a big club, it probably becomes more of a question of what move would be good for his career. If he's guaranteed starting minutes at left back at Chelsea, with Marcos Alonso as competition, and Emerson as well, who's frequently injured. Marcos Alonso's unfancied. Then yeah, decent move, and they save what, 20 million in not going for Ben Chilwell, who's their other top target. We're sort of led to believe. So he does have a few years on Ben Chilwell, but might be a good sort of savvy medium-term option while the market is a little bit unclear, while uncertainties remain. I think it'd be a smart move, and an upgrade on what they currently have. I don't think the rest of those clubs, maybe barring a massive payday at PSG, would be massively beneficial to his career. So yeah, he's going to have to move wisely, given what happened at Inter. But this is a move that's definitely going to happen in one way, shape or form. And we're sort of backing him to make an impact, aren't we?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've got a bit of a soft spot for Alex Telles because I went on holiday to Portugal with Grace, my girlfriend, last summer. Throwback to being able to go on holidays. That seems like years ago. And we watched the Porto game, and Alex Telles was immense in it. Like, he does have the most phenomenal set-piece delivery. And we often, sort of, not necessarily criticise set-piece delivery, but we say, a lot of his key passes come from set pieces, and they do, in Alex Telles' case. But, it's one of the most effective ways to score if you're able to get good delivery from set pieces consistently into the right areas. And Alex Telles is a real weapon like that. He might not have the sort of attacking threat in the final third of a Marcos Alonso, or necessarily the sort of defensive ability at his very peak as an Emerson, but he's more well-rounded than both of them, and definitely not a liability defensively like Marcos Alonso. So I think he'd certainly be a step up. But yeah, as Chris says, The Athletic were saying just this week that Ben Chilwell remains their top left-back target this summer. But it's just money dependent. They obviously want to get a backup forward in as well. They might be looking to replace one of Willian and Pedro as well. So there's lots on Frank Lampard's to-do list. So I'm with Chris. If they're looking for a cheaper option, Alex Telles wouldn't be the worst. My suggestion is Viktor Tsygankov, Ukrainian from Dynamo Kiev, 22-year-old forward. And I actually mentioned him on a podcast a couple of months ago now. And he'd sort of come to me in a who scored sort of lightning bolt moment. He just appeared off the page. And I've got to admit, I haven't watched that much Dynamo Kiev, but I've watched a fair amount of this guy, just highlights on YouTube. And he looks absolutely phenomenal. So he's 22-year-old. He's sort of diminutive, ginger forward. Doesn't look really like a footballer, but pace, his trickery, his ability to take a man on, and he just looks unbelievable in a Ukrainian league and in Europe as well. So he's been performing at the top level in Ukraine for about 3 years now. So 17-18 was 15 league goal contributions. The following year was 17. This year, 8 goals and 5 assists in 20 Ukrainian Premier League games from the wing, and can play across the forward line as well. Can play as a number 10. He's got a really nice disguise through ball. His left foot is really superb. He's got a great bit of acceleration on him as well. And looks sort of ready for a sort of lower to middling Premier League club, I would say. I mean, he's worth a shot at least. And those saying, it's only Ukraine, he's doing it in the Europa League as well. So he's got 17 goal contributions in his last 23 Europa League games. And his stats in the Europa League are something worth getting excited about. For a side that didn't get out of their groups, that have never progressed past the Europa League last 16 in his time at the club, he's really shone in the competition. So this season it's 3.2 shots, 1.8 of those from inside the area, so he's not just taking them from all areas, 3.3 key passes per 90 and 1.2 dribbles. And as I said, Dynamo Kiev didn't have the best Europa League campaign, so probably worth keeping an eye on, maybe for another year, 18 months or so. But Viktor Tsygankov, remember the name. I really do think he could potentially have a big future in the game. I'm pretty excited about him. And some other alternatives that I brought to the table from outside of Europe's top 5 leagues. Marcelino Moreno, a 25-year-old central midfielder playing in Argentina for Lanús, has looked very promising as well. this season. Lanús are only 7th in the Argentina Primera Liga, but 3 goals, 4 assists in 20 appearances from central midfield, 4.3 dribbles from the middle of the park. Always difficult to judge players in Argentina because the standard isn't, I don't think it's even as good as Portugal, really, except for at the upper echelons. And midfielders, I remember Alexis McAllister bringing him to a podcast, and his numbers were just insane there. And he's, not yet broken into the Brighton team, although seemingly was about to prior to the sort of lockdown. Gabagol as well.
What a mixture of names there, by the way. Alexis McAllister.
Yeah, Alexis McAllister. He was another one of my random pod finds. He was Scottish, Argentine descent, and he's now at Brighton. So keep an eye out for him. And Gabagol deserves a mention as well. So last year he got 25 goals and 8 assists in 29 Brazilian Serie A games. Pat, at 25, do you think Gabagol could have another shot in Europe?
I think he probably could. I think he probably deserves one, but I don't know if he will. Like, they paid quite a lot to get him back on a permanent deal for the Brazilian league. And so I think they're going to ask a really substantial fee for him to leave, and I don't know if he would now. He's having so much success that I don't particularly see why he'd go to, say, probably an upper mid-table Big 5 league side, because I'm not sure that a super club's going to take a chance and deal with the fact that the supporters are going to be on his back, and he'll probably win less than he would do if he stays in Brazil. So while I think his performances deserve it, I'm not sure that it will actually end up happening.
Fair. There you have it, guys. As we freely admit, we tend to focus on Europe's top 5 leagues here. So we want to hear from you guys from all across the world. Who are the players that we should be researching, including in our top 10 scout reports, etc., from outside of Europe's top 5 leagues? Let us know in the comments down below. And let's move on to Big Match Preview. Our Big Match Preview this weekend is Bayern Leverkusen Bayern Munich, which takes place at 2:30 on Saturday. And it'll probably be the last time we cover the Bundesliga in Big Match Preview for a little while, because La Liga is returning next Thursday, Serie A the following week. And so this is, the last time we'll be focusing on the Bundesliga for a little while. But what a way to bow out. It's first place Bayern Munich versus 5th place Leverkusen, who are just 2 points off 3rd place Leipzig. So absolutely massive game for them, Chris. And their form has been pretty good since the resumption.
Yeah, we did a bit of a breakdown on them on ERU, so I won't go over too well-trodden ground. But their form has been really, really solid since coming back. 3 victories out of 4. That 4-1 thrashing at the hands of Wolfsburg at home as well, where they're normally pretty good, was a bit of an anomaly. So yeah, like I said, they picked up 9 points in this period, which is 1 more than Leipzig, 2 more than Gladbach, just to give you a bit of a reference. And as such, it's sort of superpowered a surge up the table to 5th. A small surge, let's call it. So level on points with Gladbach now, and just 2 behind 3rd place Leipzig. So when we talk about Champions League football in Germany, Bayer Leverkusen firmly in the equation. That 4-1 defeat to Wolfsburg that I mentioned does show that they have defensive deficiencies. I think they've conceded 36 goals, which is the most in the top 6, level with Wolfsburg. Bit of a swing in that tie, of course. But they do remain lethal in attack. So only Bayern and, weirdly, Frankfurt average more than their 17.2 shots per 90 at home this season. And they've scored 21 goals in their last 8 home games in all competitions, dating back to the start of 2020. Just to give you some team stats, so you guys know where they are if you're not currently following Leverkusen. 4th for shots in the league, but 5th for shots against. So a good summary of what we were talking about before. XG rates them as the 6th best side. I think maybe that's a little bit harsh. I do think they deserve to be in contention for those Champions League places because of their attacking endeavours. And Kai Havertz, he deserves, doesn't he, to be at a side competing for the UCL Holy Grail. He's been absolutely crucial since the break. 5 goals in 4 games. He's been averaging 3 shots, 1 key pass, 1 goal a game since the resumption, like I said. And since the 15th of February, in fact, he's just been awesome. So he has bagged 10 goals in 12 games. Also getting 5 assists in that time as well, only failing to contribute in 2 of those ties. And Demirbay, who was a big money signing from Hoffenheim that I sort of backed to have a really positive impact, is starting to make that impact. He was an absolute key pass machine at Hoffenheim under Nagelsmann, regularly averaging over 3 a game. And since we've got football back underway, he's really sort of kicked on. So in those 3 games that we sort of mentioned, 1 goal, 2 assists. He's at 1.8 shots now, 2.4 key passes, 1.7 dribbles. So they're starting to creep up. He's starting to show himself as that all-rounder, that box-to-box midfielder that he sort of was at Hoffenheim. A bit more of an advanced midfielder than a box-to-box, I guess. And as long as they can sort of maintain this form and still being with a shout of a top 6 finish towards the end of the season, I think it's job done for Peter Bosch. They've got a really young squad. Only 5 of them are over 30. That's Baumgartlinger, the Bender brothers, Aranguiz and Bellarabi. Obviously, a lot of them are central midfielders, so that might be an area they want to invest in this summer, perhaps. But set up really nicely in other areas of the side. Saying that, Bayern Munich are an absolute machine this season under Hansi Flick, completely rejuvenated, and they'll probably destroy them. So there it is.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like one of Bayern's sort of last tests, but yeah, it's difficult to look past them. And it's actually one of Bayer Leverkusen's last tests as well. I don't think they play anyone else in the top 9 after this game, so they'll be hoping to finish their campaign against one of the big boys in superb fashion. But yeah, Pat, as Chris says, the Bayern juggernaut just keeps on rolling on.
Yeah, I mean, in the 4 games since they've been back, they've scored over 3 a game. I think they've scored 13 in those games and conceded 2. I mean, they've scored the most goals in the Bundesliga. They've conceded the fewest goals in the Bundesliga. They're 7 points clear now. And it just sort of feels like this one might be done. Actually, their running is fairly difficult. So they've got this away game at Leverkusen, and they've obviously lost their last 2 games against Leverkusen. They've then got Gladbach at home, though I'd probably expect them to win that. They then go away to Werder Bremen. Werder Bremen are terrible, but they're fighting for survival and weird stuff happens. Then they've got Wolfsburg away on the last day of the season, and that's not an easy fixture either. So, I mean, there's a possibility for an upset, but they need to be upset like 3 times for somebody else to win the title. That's the problem. And they've also got Freiburg in there, which is probably a gimme. My concern, if I'm Leverkusen, is probably how good Bayern's defence has been, because their attack has gone from amazing to just very good since the resumption of the league. Like, they've been finishing at a high rate, but they're actually creating less. They've gone from like 2.8 expected goals a game to 2.2, but their defence has dropped from over an expected goal a game, which is really high for Bayern, to 0.7 expected goals conceded a match. And when you look at Leverkusen's last 2 matches, their attack was horrible. Their attack was horrible in the 1-0 victory, was it against Freiburg? And their attack was horrible in that 4-1 defeat of Wolfsburg. And that is really worrying for me, because like Chris has said, like, their attack is what's special about them. Their attack is what sets them apart from a lot of other teams that have kind of middling defences. Maybe they'll actually find it a little bit easier playing against a side that are going to come out at them and leave space. You know, whereas as we know, Wolfsburg are quite conservative. They're not really going to do that. And other teams are kind of wise to Peter Bosch's counter-attacking style at this point. But, I mean, for Leverkusen, it's pretty clear who they've got to keep quiet. They've got to shut up Lewandowski and Müller. Like, I mean, Lewandowski, obviously, we've talked about him to death, but Thomas Müller is having a season for the ages. Seriously, he's got 25 goal contributions to date, 7 goals and 18 assists. That matches his best Bundesliga campaign, and he's got 5 games left to go. This season, actually, he's got 30 goal involvements in 39 appearances across the league, the cup, and the Champions League. Couple of shots a match, so still a bit of a goal threat, but really it's his creativity which sets him apart. I think he's at over 0.6 expected assists per 90 alone, which is nuts. It's like 3.5 key passes a game, puts in loads of defensive work as well, especially when you possession adjust. His defensive work is absolutely obscene. And I'm really delighted for him, because I feel like the last year and a half, people had really decided, oh, Thomas Muller, he's rubbish. He's been overrated his whole career. And he's responded by putting together an absolutely unbelievable campaign while Bayern were not at their races for a large portion of the season. But I don't know, man. I'd love to believe that Leverkusen can do it. And it'll probably be quite an entertaining game. But Bayern do look a bit unbeatable at the moment. It's frustrating.
Yeah. I remember writing for a Kevin De Bruyne script when he went to... I think it's why he fell out at Chelsea with Mourinho. It's for an everything you need to know. That the Bundesliga assist record, I think, is 21. And that's Kevin De Bruyne at Wolfsburg. So Muller's got 5 games to get 3 or more assists to level that or go past it, which would be a phenomenal achievement. But yeah, as you say, it's going to be really difficult for Leverkusen. But they do have some... good recent success to call on. They've beaten them in their last 2 games, as you said. They won 2-1 in the reverse fixture with Leon Bailey having an absolute stormer in that one. And their record against in their bigger games this season is actually really good. So they've obviously beaten Bayern, they've beaten Dortmund, they've beaten Gladbach, and they've drawn twice against Leipzig. And except for Kevin Volland, who is still out, they've got a clean bill of health to go for. Whereas Bayern, it doesn't seem to matter at the moment, but they've got Tolisso, Thiago and Coutinho all out. And Muller and Lewandowski are on a yellow card limit as well. So if they pick up a yellow, they'll miss the game against Gladbach, which might play a part in it, but I can't really see it. But if Leverkusen, they've really got to hit that sort of Gladbach height when they won that game 3-1 a couple of weeks ago, not the Wolfsburg debacle that followed. So I'm going to be absolutely intrigued to see how they perform in this game. And at the moment, I'm going 3-1 Bayern. I just think it's nailed on. Chris, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think Peter Bosz should probably take that at the moment. Like Pat said, I think they produced 16 shots in the last 2 games. So I think he's just looking for an improved competitive performance. And 3-1 might represent that, given where both teams are.
Fair. Pat, what's your score prediction?
I'd like to disagree, but I think probably 3-1 sounds about right.
Oh, all in agreement. A Continental club first. What a treat. Yeah, there we have it. Get your score predictions in the comments down below. And let's move on to our quickfire question. Our quickfire question comes in from @CaptainKirk7423. And he says, who are the players to keep an eye on when La Liga, Serie A and the Premier League start up again? Pat, who are you most excited to see? We'll leave the Premier League to one side because it's Continental club. But who are you most excited to see again in La Liga and Serie A?
I think all eyes are probably going to be on like Thomas Partey in La Liga because of the transfer links. But I actually think João Felix will be really fun to watch. I think he's had a really good, solid campaign as a 19-year-old. All his numbers are very decent in his first season in a big league with a new team who are not particularly at the races. I've been actually really, really impressed by him. So I would like to watch. I'd like to watch him, and I'd like to... I don't know. Who else? I mean, Fabio Ruiz and Zielinski, who we were talking about before when we were discussing Napoli. They're 2 of the most enjoyable central midfielders around in Europe at the moment. So yeah, why not them as well?
Nice. Hamill, what about you? Who's tickling your pickle?
Oh, well. Wouldn't you like to know? Yeah, I don't know why Eric Pulgar came to mind straight away. I think I'm remembering a glorious pass on Twitter just before Serie A shut down.
Love it.
Chukwueze from Villarreal sprang to mind as well. Tonali, Barella. Just some players that we've touted to have big futures. A few of them were putting in the performances. It looked like those guesses were coming to fruition before obviously the season was curtailed. Is there an outstanding player in? I'm looking forward to seeing if Getafe can kick their way into the Champions League as well, and if Ralf Rangnick goes to AC Milan. Actually, I think that would be a fascinating development and something we could possibly speak about next week. So there are a few things I'm looking forward to.
Nice. Yeah, in La Liga, I'm quite excited to see whether Real Sociedad can cap their fantastic campaign by securing Champions League football. I think that'd be an amazing return. Oyarzabal, Porto, Zubeldia, Mikel Merino. They've had a lot of players that have just performed superbly well. And Alexander Isak as well looked like he was really coming into his own before the break. So if they can kick off where they left off, then hopefully they'll secure that 4th spot. And then in Serie A, I mean, having spent, I think it was 9 days the game told me I'd spent tonight. Having spent 9 days playing with Inter Milan on Football Manager, I'm quite excited to see them in the flesh. and I got my shirt on because I'm extra excited. So yeah, that's what I'm most excited to watch. But yeah, guys, let us know in the comments below who you're most excited to watch when football resumes in full. Guys, that is Continental Club for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you guys made of it in the comments section down below. And Chris, what should they go and do now? If
you haven't, go and watch We Need to Talk. That'll be live on Football Daily. And just looking at our upload calendar, of course, Transfer Talk out a little bit later than normally. Build. So if you've not caught up on that, go and have a watch.
Nice. Pat?
Download the podcast as always. It's been pretty good recently.
It really has. Thanks very much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.